The following program is a special presentation of the Big Ten Network, produced in association with the University of Iowa.
Coming up in this episode, taking on sustainability, building and planning for a better tomorrow, the quest for renewable energy, and living, learning, and working for the future. Next on Iowa Magazine. The ability to maintain a certain process or state, meeting the needs of today without compromising tomorrow. The property of being sustainable. Today, an increasingly fragile environment, an uncertain global economy, and widening social disparity are some of the serious challenges before us. Sustainability is a philosophy that takes an integrated approach to complex environmental, economic, and social problems, insisting that the major issues we face are not separate, but deeply interconnected. A new chapter in Iowa's sustainability story began in 2008, when Governor Chet Culver signed an order requiring all state offices to become more environmentally friendly and economically sustainable.
I firmly believe that Iowa can become a national leader in terms of renewable energy and sustainability. We've really taken a lead in wind energy, and so it really fits into our overall goal of securing our energy future. That's really what this is about.
At the University of Iowa, the sustainability movement coalesced from concerned students, faculty, and staff, pioneering environmental research, innovative renewable energy projects, and President Sally Mason's formal initiative to make sustainability a central priority of the university mission.
This seemed like the perfect theme, and it was one that resonated with my own ideas and my own vision for what a university that focuses on knowledge and the creation of new knowledge and innovation. This is something that we could do very, very well.
A lot of people in a lot of parts of the university are involved in sustainability and have taken on that challenge and want to get active and want to get involved. And part of my role is to connect those dots.
With the initiative, the UI campus set a course for sustainability. But a devastating flood in June 2008, followed by a deepening economic recession, have made the challenge even greater. Today, sustainability may be the defining issue of our time. The University of Iowa is one institution taking up the cause. But we measure the commitment in different ways. The University of Iowa is an anchor of the surrounding community, a major employer, economic center, and consumer of land and energy resources. As such, UI planners develop the campus with a long-term view.
As we look at approaching our work in a more sustainable fashion, in a more strategic fashion, we have realized for several years now that we need to take an integrated approach to the way we take care of this physical asset. So the decisions we make today will be decisions that we live with for decades to come.
Buildings have a profound impact on the environment and the economy. In the United States alone, buildings account for 65% of electricity consumption, 36% of energy use, and 30% of greenhouse gases, raw material use, and waste output. As a community unto itself, an urban campus like Iowa incorporates sustainability into its operations.
That's the primary role and the primary definition of stewardship, building stewardship. And if you are an organization that works off of strategies and goals, stewardship becomes your number one responsibility.
This philosophy of stewardship and reinvestment has long informed Iowa's campus plan.
In our master plan, we talk about building infill, trying to make the most of the existing buildings and then using those sites to their maximum. When we do make decisions on whether or not to keep a building, to maintain or modernize a building, or possibly replace a building, it has a lot to do with the energy associated with that building. Those kinds of things are the things we look at for the long term because we're in it for the long term.
To practice sustainable development, the university meets growth needs with environmentally friendly buildings and designs.
I get involved in a lot in reviewing project designs when they're in the planning stage, and I look at, can we reach the lights? Can we get to the air handlers and the pumps? And, all these little decisions that we make that can make everything better for both our users, for our staff, and ultimately for the environment.
LEED is the nationally recognized benchmark for the design, construction, and operation of high-performance green buildings. One of several LEED projects at Iowa is the new College of Public Health academic building, which will feature green technology like reflective roofing, natural lighting, permeable pavement, and native species planting areas.
We look not only to get the stamp on the door of a building that's LEED, but to reap the benefits of those for years and generations to come in lower energy costs and, as in a larger sense, a greener world, less energy use by each of these buildings.
Sustainable planning at Iowa goes beyond the built environment as well, emphasizing green space, pedestrian pathways, and celebrating the natural landscape. The campus's defining feature, the Iowa River, took on greater significance with the flood of 2008, which ravaged university buildings and devastated communities in eastern Iowa. For some, the flood of 2008 highlighted the role the river plays in Iowa's sustainability story.
The Iowa River watershed is about 12,500 square miles. It's a very big chunk of territory. Maybe 750 to 800,000 people live within it. The flood and the likelihood of future floods is an indicator that our way of life in this watershed is not sustainable.
Larry Weber is director of Iowa's Hydroscience Engineering Group and co-chairs a task force to find long-term solutions to local flooding.
After the 2008 flood, there have been many strategies to try to mitigate flooding in the future. Oftentimes, those are very serious engineered solutions, and we are taking a slightly different approach, knowing that we can't engineer a mitigation program that will protect us from all floods, and that there may be future floods that exceed the design of those flood mitigation concepts. So we really want people to focus more on adapting to and living with floods.
Author and historian Connie Mutel wrote about Iowa's natural environment in The Emerald Horizon and believes we can look to the past as inspiration for a more sustainable place.
The main theme in Emerald Horizon is that Iowa's landscape at one time, not so very long ago, 1830s and before, was a completely sustainable landscape. Iowa's prairies and woodlands, they had covered the state since the retreat of the last glaciers, about the last 9,000 years. Our landscape is now 2/3 covered by 2 species of plants, and anyone who understands ecology at all would say that is not sustainable.
For many, the floods were a wake-up call, an opportunity to do things differently.
I think that Iowa has the possibility of becoming an example for reintegrating sustainability into the land in a big way, simply because we've taken it out in such a big way. We can go the other direction as well. And that gives me a lot of hope.
If sustainability means seeking balance between natural and man-made environments, then it also means finding longer-term, renewable solutions to power our communities. At the University of Iowa, a sustainability initiative is underway. A key part of this strategy is long-term renewable energy solutions. As a community unto itself, energy consumption is a large part of the university's ecological footprint. As such, the first step to sustainable energy is finding ways to use less.
Renewable energy is good, but arguably the most renewable energy is energy you don't use. So energy conservation is the first thing that we have to look at. We need to reduce the amount of energy that's consumed on our campus. Small changes add up. We've got nearly 30,000 students here, and if they can each turn off a light or turn off their computer, that adds up to some big dollars and some big emissions reductions.
Knowing the impact buildings have on energy demand, the UI makes efficiency a priority of new construction, as well as ongoing building stewardship.
Our greatest contribution is to keep these buildings tuned and calibrated so they're always operating at their highest level of efficiency. We can save more energy that way than any other specific program.
We're trying to strike this balance between saving energy and being comfortable, being functional. Eking out a little bit more energy savings in a design today and spending a little bit more money to get a sustainable design put into place could cause us to save money year after year after year.
One green aspect of Iowa's energy strategy is surprisingly old-fashioned. A combined heat and power system is an efficient, clean, and reliable approach to generating both electricity and thermal energy in a single integrated system.
Combined heat and power has been around for a long time. Thomas Edison built the Pearl Street Station, the first commercial electric generating plant in 18-something in New York City, and it was a combined heat and power plant. He made steam in a boiler, ran a turbo generator with that steam, and took the exhaust from that turbine generator and used it to heat buildings. It's more efficient than generating steam by putting boilers in individual buildings and buying electric from the grid, and that's the real advantage to it.
Another success in Iowa's energy story is biomass. The university takes oat hulls produced by Quaker Oats and burns this byproduct as fuel.
We're able to burn about half the energy in that boiler from biomass. It's an amazing process that we've been able to sustain such a high level of a different fuel than what the boiler was designed for.
On average, biomass represents 15% of the fuel consumed in Iowa's power plant. The success of the biomass fuel project allowed the University of Iowa to join the Chicago Climate Exchange, North America's only cap-and-trade system for greenhouse gas emissions.
We've reduced our emissions about 7% already. That's a savings of about 70,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year that doesn't go into the atmosphere, 30,000 tons of coal per year that isn't burned. It's really a win-win kind of a success story.
Recognizing the connection between renewable energy and economic sustainability, the state of Iowa has emerged as a leader in the development of biofuels and wind power.
We know that fossil fuels are limited. I mean, one day we'll run out, and therefore we have to come with alternative sources of energy. The power that comes from the wind is free, and we can extract as much as 59%, and that power can be transformed into mechanical energy and then electrical energy.
By 2010, the university plans to reduce its energy consumption by 10%. To meet that goal, some of the biggest impact will be made on the individual level. At the University of Iowa, a growing movement is underway to make the campus more sustainable. Practicing sustainability to a large extent means accounting for the hidden cost of our activities.
We like to talk about in our Sustainable Systems class, how much should a gallon of gasoline really cost? The answer one comes up with is something in excess of $7 or $8 a gallon. So we're not paying the true cost of that.
As reducing automobile congestion and pollution are keys to a sustainable campus, the university facilitates pedestrian traffic and alternative transportation. For many, the rising cost of unsustainable practices is made even clearer by an ongoing economic recession.
What the recession is doing, among other things, is making people very concerned about the disappearance of jobs, the disappearance of wealth. So there can be pressure just to develop the economy. And if you're not thinking about long-term sustainability while you're doing that, then you're just digging your hole deeper.
For the University of Iowa, efficiency means more than cutting costs, but smart reduction as well, of energy use, carbon footprint, solid waste, and the resources we consume.
We have to look at all parts of our operations, from purchasing materials and goods and services to the ultimate disposal of those materials that we're done with. And this university is taking a cradle-to-cradle approach when it comes to that. Sustainability is the way we do business now.
The cause is gaining momentum with student groups like the UI Environmental Coalition, who are dedicated to raising awareness of issues on campus.
When I joined the coalition, I knew little about environmentalism and what it means to be sustainable. So one of the great things is you're around all these people that care and are all doing different things in their daily lives and beyond to be more sustainable. You come to the group without knowing anything, but you can leave with knowing, as much as 50 people can teach you.
There's a ton of kids all over campus that are doing great things that I hear about daily, which is really exciting. The University of Iowa should be a leader. As a university, as a center of educated minds, we need to take the lead on this.
The energy and inspiration of students has been a driving force for many initiatives at Iowa.
They're just an endless wellspring of amazing ideas. I try to challenge them and I say that I'm not interested in just another design report. I want you to try to actually get something done.
One success story is the food waste composting program. What started as a class project became practice, turning pre-consumer food waste from residence halls into high-quality compost, saving water, energy, and creating a saleable product.
This is something that the landfill has talked about before, and it really took the student push, I think, on both the city end and the university end to get the excitement going and to really get all the details cemented into place. So it's really been the student push that's actually made it a reality.
Despite progress, many challenges like recycling and energy conservation remain. But as facility managers point out, practicing sustainability means individual responsibility.
We want to help implement recycling programs, we want to support recycling programs, but we want the campus community to get involved in recycling so they have some ownership of that. And that's really a culture we're trying to build. Sustainability, that's what it's all about. If you create the community culture that supports sustainability, it becomes perpetual.
At the University of Iowa, many are working for a healthier campus, but to effect lasting change, it has to start in the classroom. At the University of Iowa, students, faculty, and staff work on many fronts for a more sustainable world. For a research university, a sustainable future starts with the academic mission.
Iowa State University is known as an innovator and a crucible for innovative thought and for creative thought. And if anybody should be a leader in sustainability issues, it should be the University of Iowa.
We have to think about how we bring students and faculty together, because even though it's kind of happening naturally, we don't have time to sit around and wait for just natural things to go on. We are engaged in something that is such a huge experiment, where we are warming the earth so much, so fast, that we have to take action now.
Today, the urgency of environmental issues is clear. Less obvious, but no less urgent, are the economic and social dimensions to sustainability.
Green doesn't quite capture it. Green means environmental. And the environment is tremendously important, and I'm totally on board with that, but there's more to it than that. 1 billion people on this planet don't know where they're going to get their next meal. They don't know where it's going to come from. We can't talk just sort of generalized environmental kind of talk to them or about them. We have to imagine ways to improve the quality of their lives. And it's important to incorporate that into overall thinking about sustainability.
One of the difficulties in teaching sustainability, I think, in a rich world setting, is that we're very technology rich. And so some of the basic ideas that you need to understand to make all of those systems more sustainable are hard to grasp. Sustainability in a rich country like the United States means something very different than in a poor country like Ghana or Haiti. Sustainability to me is more of a mindset than anything, and it's a mindset that can be applied to any discipline. So any lifestyle choice, any research, anything you might do, sustainability can be a part of that.
Because of the many problems sustainability addresses, the University of Iowa's emphasis on interdisciplinary work makes it an ideal place to address complex issues that are rife with conflict.
If people just think, well, people didn't think about sustainability and now they do, and problem solved. It is not the problem solved. There are so many embedded industries that think that they are going to suffer if we make those changes, that it soon becomes a question of policy and politics as well as science.
These are very difficult issues. They're complex issues. It's absolutely necessary that we have an interdisciplinary approach when it comes to solving these problems.
climate change, impervious cover in our cities, the density of our cities, using cars so much to travel, troubles with our water and wastewater infrastructure, highways, bridges, and so forth. All of these problems are interdisciplinary in nature if you really think about it. We have a good culture at the University of Iowa for sustainability initiatives because it's already very interdisciplinary and informal. And that means that some of the barriers are already broken down, which facilitate communication across disciplines. And that's what we need.
This culture was key to the creation of a new interdisciplinary program in sustainability.
It's all about connections. Sustainability is about moving together into the future with economic development and environmental protection and equity to all groups of people moving together. And a sustainability certificate is meant to teach those connections, not just the discrete bodies of knowledge.
The Sustainability Certificate is Iowa's academic commitment within a university-wide effort to make the campus and the planet a better place.
What we have here, and we've had for a very long time at the University of Iowa, is a lot of good work on many fronts. What we were missing is a connection of all the good work that was going on many fronts.
I think in the future, what our big job is going to be is to pull all of this together so it does become the beautiful story that it's already starting to develop into in terms of how people, when they take these initiatives, can do powerful things and can change lives and change the world ultimately.
Environmental, economic, and social sustainability may be the defining issue of our time. The University of Iowa is one institution taking up the challenge. Living, learning, and working for the future.
The preceding program was produced by the University of Iowa in association with the Big Ten Network.